G'day Internet, welcome back to another video. And yes, we're back in the office, primarily because I spent all day yesterday tidying it up, and I can actually do this inside now if I want to. Anyway, on to the subject of today's video. A little while ago, we took a look at this little guy here, the original Nintendo Famicom, and its disk drive. But following that video, one of my amazing Patreons, Nathan, donated this. This is the Nintendo Family Basic, which is essentially basic, and a keyboard. So how about we start by seeing what's in the box. Here we go. Family Basic. I think this is reasonably complete, but if we open it up, we have our Family Basic cartridge in its little baggie. This does actually have something called battery backup, which I've never actually played with, so we might take a look at that later, see what it actually does. We have the keyboard itself. It plugs into the front of the console, where you would, I guess, normally plug in a light gun. It's not the worst feeling keyboard in the world. I've certainly had better, but it does the job. Set of audio leads, because you can save to cassette. These are ones I made up. And in the bottom, some documentation. We have what I believe is a cheat sheet for background graphics and the various sprites you can use in BASIC. And the manual, which is, of course, all in Japanese. Yes. I have, however, found an English translation of this manual, and I'll put that down in the description, a link to it. And that's what you get. You get a book, you get your keyboard, and you get a cartridge. So let's plug this all in and see what it does. Right, like I said, cartridge just goes in the top, and the keyboard plugs into the front, and we power it on. So when you first power it on, it goes through a little bit of a song and dance, and this is actually what threw me. I just kind of expected to turn it on and end up at a basic prompt, but no, Nintendo has tried to make this as friendly as possible. I will put some translation kind of over the top here, and I will point you to another video I found, which is basically where I got the translation from. But the short version is you hit enter to go in, and it kind of says hello or something along those lines. It then asks for your name. So, Mr. Lurch. It then asks you if you want to start Game Basic, so F1 for yes. And Game Basic starts, and you've got a couple of options. You've got Basic, and you've got a background graphic editor. We'll get to that a little later on. But one. And this is actually where I expected to find myself. But it works just like Basic. So I can go 10, print, farts, 20, go to 10, and run it. Except I got a syntax error. I hit the translation button. There's actually a button that switches between English and Japanese. There we go. Now it works. Now, one of the things I have found is you can essentially create entire games with proper graphics reasonably simply using BASIC. So go new to clear that out. Now, I'm not going to type this all because I've already done it once, but I did save it. And one of the things my laptop is doing back here is it's running Audacity, which is where I saved it. But I can go F1 for load and start the file over here. And eventually finds the program that I saved. And there we go. And I can go list, and there's everything I typed out. Now, one little quick tip when saving and loading from this is simply all I found is, and I'll show you. When I recorded this in, no matter what I did, this is the volume level that it came in as. I then had to use the effects and amplify to get essentially that, and that's the volume level that the Famicom will basically listen at. Anything less than that, essentially, if this here isn't redlining, the Famicom isn't going to hear it. This little program is actually fairly simple. All it does is allow you to use the gamepad to move Mario up, down, left and right. Simple as that. So if we go run and I grab the gamepad, I can go up, down, left, right, and we're all happy. And the program has a certain degree of logic built into it. So for instance, if I was to walk off the top of the screen or climb, he'll reappear at the bottom and you keep going. So let's actually have a look at what the code is doing. The first two lines are actually pretty simple. We're just simply clearing the screen, we're turning the sprite engine on, and we're setting our default sprite, which is Mario, which is 1, 0 in the default sprite set. The next 5 lines or so are essentially the walking pattern, left, right, up and down, and it calls various character settings, and that's where we get our motion characters from. Line 26 simply sets our start point for a bunch of variables that it's going to be using, primarily in the next couple of lines, and lines 30 and 40 set up a whole bunch of those variables. Line 50 reads a couple of those variables that were set in the previous line and gives Mario its start point, which, according to this, is x120, y140. The next half a dozen lines essentially set up our gamepad so we can use up, down, left, right and what those buttons actually do. And the next half a dozen lines essentially manipulate the animation when you hit left and when you hit right. And the lines 3000 and 3010 essentially do the same thing but for up and down. And if we step back to line 60, and there's a whole bunch of go-to 60s as well, this is also the code that handles if you go off the screen and it wraps around the other way. I've got a typo in line 101. There we go, now it's working. Now, like I mentioned before, you can load in background graphics, not just the sprites over the top. Now, I'm not going to go into how to actually program the background graphics, primarily because I haven't got my head around it. But there are some examples you can download online. Again, link in the description from archive.org. So let me show you one of those. You start off by loading the background graphics in. So if we hit 2 at the main menu, we get this, escape, go down to File, Load, just leave the file name, hit Enter, and I'm going to start playing my background file. Which again is just a WAV file. I'm playing it out of Audacity, and eventually it will start loading the background file. It'll actually come up, I think it's 3 times, maybe 4. And there we go. There is our background graphics. And it basically just kind of holds it there. So if I go escape and hit stop, we end up back here and we drop into normal basic. And if I load up the actual program file, because they do come in two files, background and the actual program, and go load and play that one. And we should just be able to go run, and there's our little game. And if this, you kind of bounce things off the walls to try and, there we go. Nope. I'm obviously not very good at this. Come on, fire. There we go. Got one. Okay, that was a fluke. And there's a cute little game. And yeah, all just kind of done from basic. And let's be honest, it doesn't look that much different to, say, the original Mario Brothers. And there we go, a nice, easy, quick little look at Nintendo Family Basic. It does what it says on the tin. It is a basic edition for a console. Now, this is by no means the only time this has been attempted. There was an add-on, I believe, for the 2600. The Intellivision kind of did it. Essentially, that's what I believe the Coleco Adam kind of sort of was. And all these machines have one thing in common. They pretty much failed. The early 80s seem to have been this time where console makers saw the incoming benefits of a home computer, tried to capture some of that market by mashing the two together. From what I can understand, however, Family Basic was actually reasonably popular in Japan, but it never got a Western release. So, look, for me at least, it's more of a curiosity, a nice to have to go with my Famicom and its disk system. And actually, speaking of the disk system, it's one of the probably more frustrating things is the fact that Family Basic actually doesn't work with the disk system. Look, in saying that, then I guess I would have to have blank media for it. That seems to be fairly uncommon. So, you know, 6 to 1, half a dozen to the other. But for now, that will pretty much do it. As always, a massive shout out to my patrons who are scrolling up the screen as I speak. If you liked the video, like, subscribe, all the usual YouTubey stuff. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.